10th CBSE Biology, Chapter Reproduction. In this video, you will learn about variation and its importance. In the previous video, you learned that DNA is the blueprint for genetic information and it is responsible for giving birth to the same kind of organism. The first step of reproduction is always DNA replication. Replication is nothing but the act of copying the DNA into a new DNA molecule. So DNA directs the synthesis of new DNA through an act of copying, and this act of copying is called as replication. Sometimes the act of copying is not perfect. So there are errors in copying. So these errors leads to a different protein, and a different protein in turn leads to a different structure or physiological state. Now observe carefully. So DNA is copied into a new DNA through replication process before the reproduction. And during this copying, sometimes there may be errors. And these errors lead to an altered protein or a new protein, which in turn leads to a different structure. And when this happens, this reflects in the organism. And the organism may be different in one or several characters. They stand out from the rest of the members of the species. And this leads to variation in the population. The variation may be reflected in the phenotype, that is the external appearance of the organism, like for example eye color, hair color. So all these are variations. Any organism is always adapted to a particular kind of environment. And this adaptation is because of its structures or features of the body. And this environment is subject to changes because of so many other factors like natural calamities and disasters. Under this altered situation, it is the variation which comes to the help of the organism to survive. Variation is the differences or changes in the inherited characters among the related organisms. Variation is very helpful because it is the variation that helps the organisms survive an unfavorable condition. It is the variation again which helps the organism to evolve into a new organism. Let us consider the classic example of industrial melanism. Industrial melanism is a melanism caused by industrial revolution. The industrial revolution resulted in the soot deposition on the tree trunks, buildings, rocks and other places, resulting in darkening of these structures. Now this had an effect on a kind of moth called peppered moth, which flies during the night and rests on the tree during the daytime. Now here you are seeing the peppered moths, and you can see there are two forms. The first one with the light color is called as the typical moth, which are well disguised on light colored lichens which grow on tree. These are not easy prey for the birds. And the second one what you are seeing is the carbonaria, the black moth, which are easily noticeable by the birds on the same background. Now both these are the different forms of the same species. Before the pollution, the number of typical moth was more as the predators couldn't find them, and the carbonaria was an easy prey for the birds as they are easily distinguishable against a pale background. Now this was before Industrial Revolution, but at the time of Industrial Revolution, the lichens stopped growing on the trees because of air pollution and also resulted in the deposition of the soot over the tree trunks. Now you can see here the image B shows you the tree trunk which is covered by soot. Under these conditions, you can see that the typical moth, the moth with the pale colored wings, is easily distinguishable against the dark background. And the dark moth, the carbonaria, is not distinguishable. Hence, at this period, typical moth was the easy prey for birds. The two forms of the moth is because of the variation, and the variation helped the black moth survive during the Industrial Revolution. It gave an advantage of the camouflage, the change of color which suits the background, helping it to avoid the predators. This is how variation helped the black moth survive during Industrial Revolution. In this video, you understood variation and its importance.